we got some questions popping in for Matthew Barnaby, and that is a great segue for bringing him in. And we are heading to Matthew Barnaby. Matthew, thank you for checking in with us tonight. Super pumped to have you join us.
Awesome. How are you guys?
Well, I'm doing okay. We're super happy that you're here with us. Yep. And we're going to dive into the Senators, obviously, Matthew. That's why we brought you in. But we had a few questions kind of to warm you up, loosen you up a little bit, and get you into the mood. So with that in mind, before we get to the Senators talk, I've always been curious when I talk to NHL players, which isn't all that often, but whenever we have them on the Rod Pedersen show, I love to get this question in, and everyone has always a very different answer. So I want yours. What was your welcome to the NHL moment when you broke into the league? Whether it was something a player did to you, maybe a hit in practice. What was your welcome to the NHL moment?
To me, it was pretty funny. Like, I had a couple when I was a rookie, when I was going in a training camp and trying to make the team. Brad May was always there and like welcoming me, but it was Rob Ray. My welcome to the NHL moment was when I was a young kid and I was a little hungover the night before, and I showed up to the game or practice the next day. He cross-grinded my skates. So when you go this way, obviously, it's one way. When you go this way, it's different. So when we all showed up, Michael Pekka, Brad May, we were a little messy the next day. So that was my welcome to the NHL moment, was cross-grinding my skates so I couldn't skate. It was funny because I watched on TSN, I think it was yesterday, and we were laughing because we saw guys that were a mess when they couldn't make practice the next day. But that was my welcome to the moment. Rob Ray, an asshole.
I mean, I can't argue with that. Did you ever have to do any of those things where like they pin you with the bill at a big dinner or something and you paid like half of your bonus?
You know what, the whole thing of rookie initiation in the NHL is great. Like, you have to pay the bill. Like, you know you're going to get there. So when you get there, you're like, it's actually a reprieve. You know, like, oh my God, I made it. I made the NHL. I get to pay the bill. The bad thing is when you get there, and you guys are the ones that are running up the bill. So for myself, it was Winnipeg. Awesome time. All the veterans were so hungover from the night before in Vancouver that our bill wasn't that big, because it was myself, Michael Pekka, Jason Daw, again, Philip Boucher, that ran up the bill. But all our veterans were so hungover from the night before in Vancouver that it wasn't that bad.
That's awesome, Barney. And I guess kind of transitioning from that too. So the first thought maybe that a lot of people have when reflecting on your career might be penalty minutes or fighting majors with 2,500 plus in the bank in the penalty minute column. But I'm curious about your, I guess, most memorable NHL goal. You scored 113 of them. What's maybe the most memorable one, the biggest situation? What's the one that you reflect on maybe the most as being the most important in your career?
Thank you for telling everyone I scored 113 goals. That's most important. Most important, everyone always goes back to Mother's Day. For me, my son was born May 2nd, 1998. I scored a hat trick on Mother's Day on the 10th. So, you know, I grew up loving absolutely the Montreal Canadiens. Matt Snaslin was my favorite player of all time. To score a hat trick on Mother's Day, you know, I still shook up, and I think of that day, and I think of how special it was. But it wasn't even about the team; it was about the journey and everything that happened. My mother was in the stands. My kid was just born. I just knocked out the Montreal Canadiens, or we just knocked out. I shouldn't just say I. But we just knocked out the Montreal Canadiens, so it was pretty incredible. So that journey to have sort of upon me was pretty incredible. I was never a scorer, obviously, but 113 goals in the NHL and having scored 3 on Mother's Day, pretty incredible feeling.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Now we have one, before we get into the Sens really quick, we have a question from John O'Flynn. Now, John is a good friend of ours. He's from out in Vancouver, and he wants to know, is Barnaby Irish? Do you have some Irish in that name?
Well, there's probably a little bit of Irish in my mom, maybe a little Scottish.
Yeah.
I don't know what she did before me, but I like to drink beer. So I'll say, I'm all in.
We're all Irish if that's the case.
A few times. Yeah. I've had an awesome time in Ireland with Brad May, Bob Bugner, all my boys. I don't know if I'm Irish. I'm a mutt. I'm a true mutt. I don't know what I really am. I'm a little French. I'm a little everything. I never knew my dad, but I'll go with Irish. I like to drink beer.
Yeah, we're all on the same page on that one. Now, let's get into the Senators talk here, Barney, if you don't mind. We're going to slap a little graphic over your face here, so we're going to put up some names with a little bit of a off-season in review, if you will. Kayla, if you can throw that Senators preview up for me, please. So the Senators came in last year. Obviously, they had a losing season, 68 points, I believe. We're just working on getting that. There it is. So, yeah, they were 25, 34, and 12. They are coming into this season with $12.5 million in cap space, which not a whole lot of Canadian teams can say. A lot of the teams have zero.
Yeah.
They've added Evgeny Dadonov, Matt Murray, Austin Watson, Galchenyuk, and Gudbranson and Artem Zub. They've subtracted Bobby Ryan. Ron Hainsey's in flux right now. I don't think he's retired, but he hasn't re-signed. Craig Anderson's on his way out. Shalapik signed overseas, I believe. Bodker's on his way out. Borowiecki is gone. Duclair, Callahan, Sabarin, Klimchuk. There's a lot of subtractions. Their top scorer last year is Brady Tkachuk with 44 points, and Tim Stützle and I guess Jake Anderson, who's not on the list here, were their top draft picks. Now, when I list off all those names, Barney, it can be an addition, it can be a subtraction. Who comes in or leaves that's going to have the biggest impact on the Ottawa Senators?
I'd say Matt Murray. I think when you look at that team, Matt Murray's the most important part of that puzzle. He's a good goaltender, and when healthy, he has a dynamic that they didn't have. Craig Anderson was terrific for this organization for the years that he was here, but Matt Murray is 26 years old and won 2 Stanley Cups, and he brings in a pedigree that is unparalleled to what they had. So he would be the name that could carry this franchise. Does Matt Murray take this team to the playoffs? No, of course not. Hockey is the one sport that you need a dynamic. You need multiple people to bring you to the promised land. He's not that guy. He's a good goaltender. I think he's a great signing by Pierre Dorion, but do I think he's the guy that carries them to the promised land this year? No, absolutely not. They're a team on the rebuild, and he is the most dynamic person in the next 4 years because that's what he signed for, to bring them to that place. But will it happen this year? Absolutely not.
Now, before we go too much more into the current roster makeup, the offseason additions, all that kind of stuff, the Senators have been a team, that they've been in the headlines a ton in the last 2 or 3 years, Barney, but as we all know, a lot of it hasn't been for the right reasons. You don't have to go into each specific incident or whatever happened, but in terms of where that team is at right now, are they in an okay place? Are they still a dumpster fire, according to a lot of people? Where's this team at organizationally right now?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're a dumpster fire. I think we can go back to the Uber incident where players are talking about assistant coaches or coaches where they are, and I think it was overblown to say the least. But having said that, they're a young team. Are they going to make the playoffs this year? Hell no. I work for Bet99. We gauge teams and we put odds. I think they're at plus 9,900 to make the playoffs this year or to win the Stanley Cup. I mean, they're not a playoff team. It is what it is. But Logan Brown, Fournette, Brandstrom, Stützle, they have a lot of great young kids. They're going to be a very good team in a few years. Is it going to happen this year? No. I mean, you take young kids against men that are established. They're not a playoff team. They're not a great team. Will they be better than last year? Of course they will. They've made a lot of improvements, but in fact, it's going to take time. And that's just the reality of being in the NHL, being in a professional sport where you have to compete against the best in the world. They're better than they were last year. They're not there this year. They won't be there next year. In a couple of years, we will talk about the Ottawa Senators, and they'll be much better.
Absolutely. And you mentioned his name already, Barney, and Tim Stützle. It's not often that a team gets the number 3 and 5 picks in the draft. So his name, along with Jake Sanderson, what do you see their development paths looking like maybe potentially this year for Tim Stützle, who's projected to be on the roster, and Jake Sanderson maybe a little further behind? What do you see their development paths looking like for this young Senators team?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, you look at Stützle, he's high. Anyone that watched the World Junior Championships last year and watched Germany, he's high level skill. He's to me like Patty Kane. Whether he gets to that level, time will tell. I mean, you don't compare a kid to Wayne Gretzky or Mario Lemieux or Patty Kane even on that level without getting to see him at that national level. He's an elite talent. He's got great skills. He's got great feet, got a great shot, and he's very deceptive. Having said that, he has to see it at the National League level. But he is an A-plus prospect, and I love him. I love him as a player. You talk about the Lafrenières, you talk about Byfield, you talk about Stützle. They're all completely, totally different players. But Stützle will add something, a dynamic that Ottawa doesn't have. As for Sanderson, I played with his dad, incredible athlete, incredible speed. He's a defenseman. His dad was a forward. This is the closest his dad is ever going to get to the D zone, I can tell you that. But he's an awesome player at North Dakota, and he will be a very good NHLer. So they did very, very, very well in the top of the draft, and I think they will be at the top of the draft again this year.
That's fair. A lot of the conversation around this all-Canadian division, the consensus pretty much is that they're going to finish last. I mean, there's too many other good teams in the Canadian division, and we will ask you your thoughts on that to end the interview. So start thinking about where your thoughts are in that Canadian division. But in terms of the Senators roster, top to bottom, they are almost, I think, completely turned over now from that 2017 playoff run that everyone talks about, that they've dismantled the whole team. In terms of the rebuild, Eugene Melnyk promised unparalleled success within 5 years, not that long ago. Where do you see them being at in that process?
Well, this year I see them finishing either last or second to last. It's them or Detroit. And I live in Ottawa, so it's tough for me to say. And I love watching them because I love watching the success of the restaurants and the bars that, equal the parallel that they have to having success. Having said that, they're young, right? Like, they're young. I remember when I was young, like, you just try to make yourself in the league. And I don't care how good Stützle is. We can go back to Jack Hughes last year with New Jersey. Like, he's the first overall pick. Does he make that big a difference? No. Will Lafrenière be that big a difference in New York? He's going to be good, but is he going to make that big a difference? So it doesn't change my opinion on where Ottawa finishes. They're either last or second last or third last. They're going to get a top 5 pick, and I hope they do better. I just don't see it. It's young kids. Like, you're going to have Alex Ferment. You're going to have Brandstrom. You're going to have Zub that comes over as the number 1 D-man from Russia coming into the fold. And I watched him skate with my son all summer long. Very good player. But until you get to the National Hockey League level, it's a different beast. So Ottawa's going to be in the bottom 5, and that's just the way it is. And I love them. I love Pierre Dorion. I love what they're doing. But unfortunately for them, it's going to be a process, and a very long process. We're not talking a year. We're not talking 2 years. We're talking 3, 4, 5 years. So that's my answer.
Absolutely, Barney. And you know what? Maybe from on the ice to behind the bench, DJ Smith seemingly did a respectable job in his first season at the helm of the Senators. Although the win totals maybe weren't glamorous, the compete level seemed to be there most nights. That was something that I noticed a big difference from 18-19 to 19-20. So what does he need to do to help this team even take another tangible step forward this season?
Well, I think DJ's a great guy. I think Pierre Dorion's doing the right thing, and they work within an eternal cap, not the salary cap. And I think there's two different, possible. When you talk about cap, we talk about a salary cap, and we talk about an internal cap. They work within an internal cap, and I think DJ does an unbelievable job. And he brings in guys that he knows, and he's brought in Brown, he's brought in Good Branson. They're going to add to the dynamic that they have, and we can add Dadanoff to the mix that's going to improve a power play. It was, I think, 14.4% roughly to the dynamic last year that they had. So they're going to be a better team, and I think it's about more mentality and what they want to achieve in the future. You structure your team, and when I was in Buffalo, we had a good young team, and it took us a year or two to really realize what we can be. We needed a good goaltender. Matt Murray is that guy for them. We had Dominic Hasek, maybe the greatest all time. But when you look at Ottawa's future, the future is very bright. Is it in 2020, 2021? Probably not. 2022, 2023? Now we're talking. Now we have a team, because you're led by a guy like Brady Tkachuk, Stützle, Thomas Chabot on the back end. This is a pretty damn good, talented team that you're going to build around. So, future is very bright here.
So you talked about Brady Tkachuk, and obviously he's coming off a pretty solid season. He's shown a lot of signs that he can become that star player for the Senators in the future. He obviously will play a very big role for that team. Now, you played against his dad back in the day. How similar of players are they? What traits does Brady have that maybe his dad didn't? And you can bring Matthew into the conversation as well if you want, but what about that family makes them so special in terms of their hockey talents?
That's a very, very roundabout way of saying I'm old. I want to thank you for that. Yeah, I'm almost 50. Thank you.
No problem.
Jeez, Clark.
Keith was an unbelievable player, a big man. They all make their money in the same way, and they're all built from the same breed. Here's what I know. I've coached against the kids. I have a son that's in 98, committed to Penn State. They were obviously, Matthew went to London and Brady was at BU. They've made their way in the NHL. They do what they do. They're all the same. The Tkachuks are the same. They are, bring your lunch pail. We're going to go to the front of the net. We don't care if you punch us in the head. We don't care if there's a rebound in front. We got to take a cross-check in front. They are who they are. They don't cheat the game. They are great players. Underrated skills, all of them. Underrated. Like, you look at Brady Tkachuk in Ottawa. You would think of him as a grinding forward. Yeah, he's a grinding forward. Matthew as well. Keith, you'd think, okay, he only made his money in front of the net, but underrated skill and great team guys. I can tell you from every player that ever played with Keith, and I can tell you from Jay McKee, who's one of my best friends, one of the best guys he's ever played with. I can tell you from every player that's ever played with Brady Tkachuk, he is the man. He is loved. And the same as Matthew. They are who they are. They're always going to have your back. They love who they are as a player, and they have underrated skills. So all three of them, I wish I had that dynamic. I was just a average tough guy.
Either way, fun to watch, Barney. But just to follow up on that with Brady, are we looking at the next captain of the Ottawa Senators, and what does an extension look like for him? Again, as you alluded to, he's loved by that fan base.
Yeah, Colin McAnulty from Ottawa actually asked that same question. Do you think Brady Tkachuk is the future captain of the Senators, essentially, is what he's asking?
Yes. Yeah. My son skates with all of them in the summer. Thomas Chabot is, to me, an incredible talent. I think he's by far the best, most talented guy on the team. But as for captain and talking with Pierre Dorion over the years, he is a guy that brings you into a fight. Not one. Maybe on a Tuesday night you're in Edmonton. You might not feel like it, but he brings you into a fight. So yes, I think he's a guy that brings the whole team into a fight. He's the guy. He's the guy. What does the extension look like? I mean, we're looking at 7-8 years, 7 times 7, $49 million. That would be my ideal.
I like it.
Not a bad payday.
Not a bad payday for a good kid. And Barney, I apologize. I'm going to age you a little bit here as well. But we want to talk about the uniforms a little bit. The Senators obviously going a drastic change on the ice as well as in the uniform department. So going back to those nostalgic 92, 93 uniforms, the expansion era Senators, what do you think about their decision to kind of go back to that nostalgic realm? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What do you think on that in terms of the threads on the ice?
I love it. I love it. I really do. I think a lot of the Adidas retro jerseys are very, very cool all throughout. I think they're awesome. Here's what I can tell you. They'll win a lot more games than the 93 Senators that I played against. And Alexandre Daigle was leading the charge. So I love them. I think they're great. And we're in an era right now where we have to generate some revenue for the NHL. So I love them. I think they're great.
Now, just last one before we let you go. You mentioned all of the jerseys from the teams across the leagues. You played for a few teams in your heyday. Out of the teams that you played for, now I'm putting you on the spot because I don't have the pictures for you, but top of your mind, out of the teams that you played for, which jersey do you like the best from the new ones that they just released?
Wow, that's a tough one. But thanks for telling me that I got traded a lot and I wasn't wanted.
Hey, I would say, can I tell you a quick story, Barney? Mike Sillinger. Yeah. Mike Sillinger's from Regina. He obviously holds the record for most teams.
Times, right?
That's it. He holds that record. I've talked to him, and he said, I don't look at it as teams that didn't want me. I look at it as half the league wanted me so bad that I got traded all the time. So take that. I would say that's a compliment. Man. Yeah.
I love Silly. I have another great story about Silly that I'll tell you another about Ryan Murray, but you probably know it. But awesome dude. I love Silly. His kids are great players, by the way.
Yes.
Honestly, I love Buffalo. I love the new Buffalo ones. Mm-hmm. And they're simplistic, they're easy. I like Buffalo, but also Colorado. When you revert, I was in Colorado a very short period of time, and I need to send out condolences to Pierre Lacroix, who an unbelievable person, traded for me. I don't want to tear up. I love the man so much. He was such a great person, a great family man. But the new Colorado jerseys with the Quebec logo. I played my junior at Quebec City. Pretty awesome. So I'll go nostalgic for me, Buffalo, but Colorado pretty damn good.
Now, you mentioned the short time in Colorado. You had 9 points in 13 games in your stint in Colorado, Barney, so not bad.
I was awesome. Thank you.
You mentioned the silly story. Hey. You mentioned your silly story. Is it appropriate to tell on air? Can we hear it? Even if it's not, just tell it anyways if you can.
Okay, I'll tell it anyways.
Yeah.
So
we're an after
rumor.
dark show. It's fine.
Exactly.
All right, it's okay. All right, so silly rumor was he was getting traded from like Tampa to Florida, and Brian Murray, who we all love, unbelievable guy and Ottawa-born guy, and we all know Brian Murray, but he gets traded, and Brian Murray had a list, so they call Mike, and they're like, Mike, you've been traded. And Mike's like, where did I get traded, Brian? And he's like, well, you have a notepad. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, all right, okay, take down this information, and this is your flight information. And he's like, okay, Brian, let me know. He's like, okay. It's an S54FT. And he's like, Brian, I didn't get the first letter. He's like, S543. He's like, Brian, I still didn't get it. But Brian had a list. And Brian kept on saying F. He thought it was an F instead of an S. And he kept on making him pronounce it. And anyone that knows silly just knows he was just fucking with Brian Murray.
Yeah.
Who was the nicest guy in the world. But he had everyone around him waiting around, just waiting for him to say F instead of F.
He probably had it on speakerphone. And, yeah.
Everyone was just sitting around, just listening to him. Yeah. Beautiful.
Oh, man.
Love Silly.
Yeah, Sillinger is a great dude. I played noon hockey with him last couple of years. He's unreal guy.
I can imagine that didn't go well for you.
Don't play golf with him.
He still can play. He's still got some wheels.
I saw him as a stick on the golf course working for the RP show. He had the closest to the pin, and I guess his group was like, "Yeah, not surprised. Just give him the prizes already. Yeah. He's going to do it."
But the thing is, he's got mechanical hips now. He's basically a robot from the waist down. So
really?
Man.
Yeah, he got some hip surgeries done. So I guess we'll give him credit. I guess where credit's due. He can still wheel pretty good.
Absolutely.
Barney, thank you for checking in with us. Yes. This has been amazing. Thanks for the breakdown of the Senators. We wish you a great night. Stay safe out there, and we'll do it again down the road.
All right, sounds good, boys. Cheers.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Thanks a ton, Barney. You too.
That, of course, was Matthew Barnaby, brought to you by IKS Media, our video guest sponsor. That was fantastic.
That was awesome. That was great.
Brought to you by IKS Media. IKS is your premier destination for event planning, live broadcasts, and entertainment, video screens, so much more. Visit iksmedia.ca today for more information and find out how they can make your event the hottest ticket in town.